When you visit Arizona, time is measured in moments, not minutes. Like the moment your work stress disappears as you kayak through the canyons. Or the moment you discover the life-changing effects of prickly pear chocolate. But nothing beats the moment you see the Grand Canyon for the very first time. Visit a new state of mind. Learn more at hereyouareaz.com.
To listen without ads, head over to patreon.com/rightandwrong.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On this episode, I am joined by a best-selling thriller novelist who ran the UK's first MA in crime writing for 5 years and has also written a play, several published articles, short stories, and non-fiction true crime investigations. But that's not all. When she's not writing thrillers, she's writing heartwarming rom-coms as Eva Woods. It is, of course, the Claire McGowan. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
Thanks so much for coming, for being on the podcast with me. Really fun to get you on. There's so much to talk about, but let's start with the new book, Truth, Truth, Lie, out 21st of May. Tell us a little bit about it.
So it's a kind of a locked room mystery or a fixed cast mystery, like I've heard him describe recently. So it's a group of friends that go to an island, a small private island off Scotland for a 40th birthday. And over the course of the weekend, they decide to play the game True Truth and a Lie, and only to find that somebody has put an extra one into the box in writing they don't recognise, which accuses them of all having been responsible for someone's death. Things kind of start to unravel from there.
And it's the point of view character is actually sort of an outsider within the group, is that right?
Yes, there's 2 point of view characters. So there's one of the wives of one of the guys in the group who's always felt like an outsider. And then there's the kind of queen bee of the group, Vicky, whose 40th it is as well.
Okay, very cool. And it's got all those kind of like elements that we love in like a thriller, a sort of pseudo cold case, the kind of mystery, and you don't know if you're from the outside looking in, if you're in on the outside and things like that. It gives me it's a kind of, the setting is kind of like a luxury, like fancy sort of retreat thing for this shared 40th, right?
Yeah, so it's you actually can hire private islands quite easily. You can get them on Airbnb even, because some of these are just they're just like a rock basically with a house on it. So not necessarily that luxurious to go to a small island, but in this case, it is quite a luxury lodge that they've gone to, but it's also very remote and cut off.
Yeah, because it was giving me like Glass Onion or like White Lotus kind of vibes.
A little bit, yeah, probably not as luxurious as that.
Okay. Well, I didn't know you could. Yeah, that's new. I didn't know Airbnb had private islands on it. That's pretty cool.
Does. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was that part of the research for this novel?
Oh yeah, I mean it's because you can get anything really on Airbnb, so it's worth having a look.
Okay, cool. So the novel is a thriller, but had a flick through your kind of back catalogue, and it is eclectic. Am I right in thinking that whilst you've written, you're around 30 novels at this point?
No, it's this will be 24. So.
24, okay.
Yeah.
Approaching 30 at some point in the near future. Mm-hmm. Do you lean, whilst you do write a lot of genres, things like that, is it largely thrillers? That's like your kind of main thing?
Yeah, so you mentioned the Eva Woods books. I've actually kind of wrapped that up now. It is an alter ego, so mostly doing crime, and then I published a literary novel last year as well. So crime is my main thing, and then I usually do 1 or 2 other things on the side as well.
Oh, okay. But you did quite a few romance novels as Eva Woods.
I did 7, so they were, some of them were rom-coms, and then some were more like uplit women's fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What came first, like your desire to write thrillers or your desire to write romance?
I don't think I understood the genres that clearly. I don't think people necessarily do when they're starting to write. I think most people, when they're writing their first book, it's just a kind of literary-ish low story. That's my theory anyway. And then you kind of discover story and genre later on.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. So I didn't deliberately try to write crime, but then it just seemed to work for me, so I kept going.
Yeah, I've heard that from other authors where I've said like, you know, you wrote this genre, like, was that something that you're interested in? And they said, to be honest, I was just writing a story, and then my agent or like the publisher was like, oh, so this is this genre. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to me too. That it was, I didn't really get that it was crime, and then they said, oh, this is crime, it's got a murder in it, of course it's crime. But,
okay. So you said you're kind of not really doing as much Eva Woods stuff. Is that because you wanted to just focus more on thriller stuff, or do you kind of prefer the kind of the pacing and the high intensity-ness of a thriller versus the more coziness of the Eva Woods stuff?
yeah, I definitely find it easier to write things that are plot driven, story driven.
Yeah.
I think it's actually quite difficult to pull off a really good rom-com or women's fiction book because it's so character driven.
Yeah. And you have to, when you're writing something, and I mean, this is the same of thrillers too, I guess. I mean, writing's hard in general, but when you're writing something that's very much genre based, you have an obligation to fulfill a certain number of sort of tropes, and like not in a bad way, but it's like if someone's reading a certain genre, they expect certain things. Like in a rom-com, they expect a happily ever after. Is it difficult writing in genre to always keep it fresh whilst also respecting that your audience does want those boxes ticked?
I think it is because people, they want the ending they expect, but they want it in a way they don't expect, which is quite difficult. And also different people work things out at different times. So it's kind of impossible to write something where people haven't guessed the twist at all. And then they seem to be quite disappointed if they've guessed the twist. So you have to sort of stay ahead of them, or maybe throw in, what I like to do is throw in an extra twist at the end.
Oh, okay. So you kind of trick them by being like, oh, you thought that there was only one twist, but there's actually two twists.
Yeah, or more than that even. So.
Yeah. And is it a very important, I mean, it's almost part of the genre of being a thriller, is like that there is a big twist in it. How much focus when you're writing a story is about the twists?
When I'm teaching, which I am teaching a course at the minute, and I previously taught quite a bit, I always say, I don't think you have to have a twist in a crime novel, because I think people don't understand what a twist is for a start. Not the same as just finding something out. That's a reveal. Twist is something that you were deliberately misled about. So I don't think that you do have to have that. And I think that focusing too much on those can lead to unearned twists where they just kind of come out of nowhere and it's just to kind of shock you and they don't make any sense. So I do think most thriller authors are always trying to kind of one-up each other and discover the next great twist. But I think the best twists just come out of character, actually, that where it's all kind of there already and you just didn't see because you were being distracted and looking at something else.
Yes.
So you could have worked it out, but you didn't, is the kind of best twist, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like the information was there for you, and then
you just didn't take it in. So
what they did, surprising yet inevitable, is the one way I've heard describing twists.
Yeah, good twists anyway.
Yeah, I've seen Brandon Sanderson has talked about an approach he takes towards twists, which is like sort of off-brand, and he uses this metaphor of like his son when he was younger used to want this like toy car, and he would sort of dangle this toy car in front of his son, but he would be like, oh, maybe we'll buy it next time at the shop, or like every time they go to the shop, maybe we'll buy it next time. But every time he was there, he'd be like, wow, this truck's really cool, this plastic aeroplane or whatever. And very slowly he says, this is what I do in the novel, is like, I make you think that you want this one thing to be the resolution, but actually very kind of subtly I'm sort of pushing you towards this other thing. And then when the other thing turns out to be the right resolution, the reader is sort of like, oh yeah, no, maybe I did want that all along. I didn't want the other thing, the obvious thing that I thought I wanted. Yeah,
maybe it's like you kind of want to find out everything that's been happening, but not yet. So
yeah, exactly.
The minute people kind of figure out what's going on, they're kind of disappointed, even though that's also what they're trying to do.
yeah. It's a balancing act, right? It's about feeding enough information that people are sort of somewhat satisfied by what they're learning, but also still eager to keep reading on to find out the full extent of it.
Yeah, but it can't just be fake mystery as well. It has to make sense, I think.
Yes. Oh, okay. So before we delve into more of that, which was really interesting stuff, I did want to quickly rewind a bit. And this is your 24th novel. Safe to say you know your way around a writing desk and the publishing industry. So I'd love to go back to, if you can indulge me here, when you wrote your first sort of full manuscript. Do you remember how long ago that was?
Yeah, it was probably around 2009 when I finished it. Took me quite a while. It took me probably about 3 or 4 years to get to that point of having actually finish something. So,
was that finished with redrafts, or was that finished as in like just the first draft?
So I think I was writing it in a slightly different way than I write now. So I was deleting a lot and adding a lot. So yeah, that was probably finished and ready to go out. Maybe it was longer than that actually. So definitely started sending it out in 2010. And that book actually I still haven't sold that book, so it never got published as of yet. So let's say maybe 3 years it took. So.
Oh, okay. But did you find an agent with that book, or was it a later book that you found your agent with?
I didn't really know much about the industry at that point. This was 2010 as well, so it's kind of slightly before Twitter and things like that. I think Twitter started in 2012, but I might be imagining it. So I didn't really know that much about how publishing worked, and I was just kind of using the old-fashioned methods of Register an Artist Yearbook, and I was only sending it to one agent at a time. So that book was with one agent for 6 months.
Wait, why are we only sending it to one agent at a time?
Well, like I just said, I didn't understand the industry, so I thought that's what you were supposed to do, because you didn't have the same information, wasn't kind of readily available. So in the meantime, I wrote something else anyway, and I managed to get an agent for that and sell that.
Oh, right. Okay. So was that the second thing you wrote? Was that with Diana Beaumont, who is your current agent that you signed with?
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. To serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
No, Diana's been my third agent, so moved around a fair bit. And also people leave and go into different jobs and things. So there's a fair amount of movement in the industry as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Was it because of things just like happening to move around that you left with your previous two agents, or was it that you it wasn't really working out?
The first agent I had, she left to go and be an editor.
Okay.
I think she still is an editor now. And then the other one, it was just that I wanted to write different things as well as crime. But I do always recommend that as a good move to people if they feel a bit stalled in their career, to maybe think about a fresh start.
Yeah, and it's not, sometimes these things just don't work out. It's like a very complicated relationship, I think, between an author and an agent. And it's sometimes when it doesn't work out, it's neither person's fault. It's just like that's the way it goes.
Yeah, or sometimes it might work for a while and then you might need something different as well.
I mean, in terms of needing something different, would I be right in thinking that what an agent does at the beginning of someone's career with like maybe their debut novel or like their second or third novel, is that quite different to what an agent will do for someone like you now who has written over 20 novels?
Depends where you are. So if you're staying with the same publisher, the agent doesn't really have to do that much. In theory, you just renew the contract, or maybe you try to renegotiate the contract a bit. But it's so, for me at the minute, my agent wouldn't read those books. She would if I asked her to, but I don't always ask her. You just send them straight to the editor now if they're under contract. But if we're trying to sell something new, then we'll do quite a bit of work on that.
Right. Okay. And presumably, the longer you're with a publisher, the more of a rapport you'll build up with the editor, I imagine. So
in theory, I mean, there's a huge amount of editorial churn, I think, in the industry at the minute. So it's quite unusual now to hold on to an editor for a lot of books.
Okay. So I'm guessing over the course of your books, you've had many different editors.
Yeah, I think it used to be an author could keep the same editor for 20 years, build up an amazing relationship, but I'm not sure that's happening anymore.
Yeah, I guess just with the turnover is much shorter than it used to be. Yeah,
so it's not unusual now to lose your editor before your books even come out.
Oh, before wow, that's bizarre, isn't it?
Well, what happens
when you have to start working with a new editor? Do you find that there's like a period of like teething, of like kind of figuring out how you're going to work with this new person?
I think the biggest problem is if somebody hasn't bought you as an author, taking you on board as an author, then they're often less invested. Not always. So my editor at Amazon, she didn't acquire me to start with, but we've been working together now for quite a few books. Uh-huh. So definitely not talking about her here, but it is common, I think, for if you get a new editor on a book that they didn't acquire, for them to be less interested.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see how that, because a lot of the time the person at the publisher who is championing whatever the book is obviously the commissioning editor, the person that picked it up in the first place.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Going back to you were talking about writing and workshops, teach writing and workshops and things like that. The crime writing MA, you ran it for the first 5 years. This is the one in the UK. Mm-hmm. Were you the kind of instigator in that? Was it you that kind of was the driving force in making that happen?
I didn't. It wasn't I think someone else was supposed to teach it initially, and then they had to drop out before it started. Okay. So I came on board pretty early. It wasn't my idea, and I wasn't involved in kind of establishing it. But before it had started running, I came on board. So yeah, I did shape it quite a bit.
Oh, okay. How did you go about approaching, like, sort of making a curriculum for that?
So it was based off an existing course, which was called the MA Novels. It was for literary novels. So I took that and I adapted it. I made it more commercial. One of the biggest changes I made was I asked the students to write a longer book. So they had to write, I think, minimum 60,000 words for the literary novels. I didn't think that was enough for crime, so I put it up to 80.
Okay. Oh, are literary novels normally shorter than crime novels?
It depends. I think you can probably get away with a shorter one. Although in saying that, it is more common now, I think, for crime novels to be a bit shorter as well.
Yes, because I guess I would imagine that's to do with the fact that crime has become a big thing in like indie publishing and ebooks, and like the speed that those come out. Sort of, if an author is releasing like 3 crime novels in a year, you can justify them being a bit shorter.
Yeah, there's also been more sort of literary crime, I think, which can be a little shorter.
Okay. So you're not teaching the MA anymore?
I don't think it exists, actually, sadly. I think they kind of scrapped it not long after I left, which was a shame because it was quite a successful course. There were quite a lot of people published from it.
Yeah. And you are still teaching and you still do workshops and things?
Yeah, more of an kind of ad hoc or shorter courses.
Oh, okay. And what can people listening, if they were interested in getting into, doing one of your workshops, something like that, what could they expect to kind of learn about and hear about on one of your workshops?
What I'm always trying to do, I think, is get people to discover their own process. So I don't want to be one of these authors, teachers that says you have to do it this way, or you have to do it that way, or it won't work, because everyone's quite different. So I just try to empower people to find their own way. I focus quite a bit on story. But I also think that in some ways doing a course while you're writing a book is counterproductive, because do you also have a theory that you have to sort of go away and just be alone with your work for a while, or at least learn the information, take it on board, and then go off and be alone with your book? Because if you're showing people bits of your work as you go along, I think it can just put you off, actually, in many cases.
I guess it's the reason people love doing a vomit draft, where it's just like get the whole novel out. Whereas if you're working on it in a collaborative way, like in a workshop or something like that, and like as you're doing each like chapter or whatever, people are looking at it and giving feedback, and you haven't even written the next bit yet, it can definitely, I can see how it takes the wind out your sails.
Yeah, definitely. And then you're in your kind of editorial brain, so you stop creating a lot of the time. You stop writing and you go back and edit things instead.
Do you think it's important then for people to, you said editorial brain, so I'm going to guess that you think that there's like a kind of creative writing brain. Do you think it's important to kind of maintain that writing brain to get to the end of the novel and then go back? And then, okay.
I think so, yeah. So I sometimes don't even read over stuff until I have a decent chunk of the draft, and I don't correct anything, so I just keep going.
How much would it be a decent chunk, like in terms of like a percentage of the novel?
It depends. I think ideally you would probably do the whole thing, but maybe like 60,000 words is a good initial draft, and then you can go back and fill in things. I think every book is different, and every writer is different too.
Yeah. 60,000 words, which would be on the shorter end. So
that would be like an incomplete story. So then I would go back and fill in bits.
Yeah. What people call additive editing, right? So it's like if you've written short, that gives you the opportunity to edit without having to cut. You're now adding stuff instead.
I've never heard that word before, but yeah, that kind of thing. And then some people, it depends how you write as well, because some people end up writing too much and then they have to cut back.
Yes. Yeah. And that would be like, it's often hard to like find the spaces to cut, which is why some authors opt to say like, well, I want my first draft to be under what it should be, so that I don't have to think too much about the parts I'm cutting, and then I can focus on when I'm editing, I can focus on the things that I need to add. Yeah. Instead of take away. Okay. One more question before we get to the desert island, and that is, you've obviously been teaching for many years now, and you've kind of experienced lots of different students and people learning to write. What is the sort of most common mistake, or like biggest mistake, that you see new writers coming in with when they're trying to learn the craft?
That's a good question. Well, when you said mistake, I immediately kind of wanted to say, there are no mistakes. It's all a process. It's about trusting yourself and not having. The biggest problem people have is their own mental blocks, I think, rather than particular errors. But I think people struggle with viewpoint quite a bit. So the idea of a narrative viewpoint rather than a kind of free-floating one. Okay. And of course, you can do a free-floating one, but you have to know what you're doing. So. Okay.
So as in, defining whether it's like an omniscient narrator, or you're doing like a first-person narrator, or like a third-person narrator.
Yeah, or just kind of jumping around between those willy-nilly. Okay. Also, I think probably the biggest factor in whether someone will get published or not is the strength of the story and the concept. Mm-hmm. A lot of us, when we're starting out to write, we are just writing some kind of thinly veiled version of our life. So it's not necessarily a commercial story. So it doesn't really matter if you're a talented writer, because it's not going to sell. It's not a sellable idea.
Yes. People often say that usually the first book an author writes is the most autobiographical.
Yeah.
In many ways. Awesome. That brings us to the point in the episode where we send Claire off to a desert island, and we ask, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
I'll probably say The Secret History, which I normally say for questions like that, just because I've read it probably like 12 times. And
oh, wow.
I will read it, I'm sure, again soon. I think the last time I read it was 4 years ago, so I'll probably read it again soon.
Yeah.
But it's a book that's just endlessly rewarding, I think. And because it's got such a strong story, but it's also really beautifully written, so it rewards kind of slow, close reading.
Yeah, Donna Tartt is a real talent.
Yeah, just really sad that it's never been made into a film or TV. There are reasons for that. There's a lot online about it as to why it's never got to that point, but it is a real shame.
She's had haven't one of her other books got made into a movie, I think.
Goldfinch, I think, did. Yeah.
Goldfinch, yeah. I don't think people liked it that much. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
But that always happens with adaptations, though, because we have such high expectations from the book, and then it's like, oh, it's not how I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Amazing. I've got some more questions about plotting, pantsing, writing schedules, but we're at the end of the regular episode, and that will all be in the extended cut exclusive to my amazing Patreon subscribers who make this podcast possible. But that brings us to the end of this interview. Thank you so much, Claire, for coming on the podcast, telling us all about your latest book and everything that you've been doing in writing publishing. It's been awesome chatting with you.
Thank you. Yeah, so next book is out May 21st. So.
Yes, it is indeed, and it is called Truth, Truth, Lie.
Truth, Lie, yeah.
For anyone wanting to keep up with what Claire is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at InkstainsClaire, or on Instagram and TikTok at Claire McGowan Writer, on Facebook at Claire McGowan, or her website clairemcgowan.co.uk. To support the podcast, like, follow and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and follow along on socials. Join the Patreon for extended episodes, ad-free and a week early, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Claire, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.
When you visit Arizona, time is measured in moments, not minutes. Like the moment your work stress disappears as you kayak through the canyons. Or the moment you discover the life-changing effects of prickly pear chocolate. But nothing beats the moment you see the Grand Canyon for the very first time. Visit a new state of mind. Learn more at hereyouareaz.com.